Welcome to Women in HVACR, and we're hoping that today you learn quite a bit. Thank you guys for that. As they said, it was my birthday yesterday, so it's been kind of a crazy week. I'm going to start sharing my slides, guys, and we're going to go going because it's 11:02, and I know that time is valuable to everyone. As you join, if you want to put your name in the chat, if you want your information, if you want the slide deck or anything like that, or have questions, go ahead and fill in there. If anybody has some really pressing questions or anything like that, I'm going to assign my team, which is the girls up at with the blue screens, if you will. And they can also reach out to you as far as if you want to put some in there. We have the board of directors. A lot of them are on today, and they can follow up with you, or if there's a big pressing question, they'll interrupt me. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and share, and we're going to get started because it is a lot of ground to cover. All right, everybody see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right, guys, as I said before, we are painting in broad strokes. This is an HVAC industry overview. It is a massive industry, guys, and one that I have fallen deeply, deeply in love with. And I hope you will too after this, honestly. A lot of you are joining. I know from several companies, I've seen a lot of the registrations. I've talked to a lot of your bosses that were like, we're going to put our entire team on this, or we're going to put all of our new people. That's awesome. We're glad you're here. And we hope that this gives you a foothold where you normally would probably feel a little bit shaky and give you kind of that crash course and a jump start to your career in this industry. This kind of goes over kind of what it said before, a lot of the who, what, when, where, and why. It's not going to go into any depth. You're not going to get a lot of mechanical knowledge, but I hope by the end of this, you'll know the difference between a heat pump and an air conditioner, and you'll be able to know what a ductless unit is, and you'll know the difference between a distributor and a manufacturer. And that's kind of where we're at. And maybe everybody else, even some of the OGs on this call, might learn something too. This knowledge comes from 9 years of experience in the industry and about, 36 now, growing up in a contracting family. We have kind of seen and done it all. I still, obviously, very young and always learning. There are many things that I'm still learning, but there are several things that being involved in Women in HVACR has given me kind of a crash course, and probably the speed dating, if you will, of networking that has enabled me to get the education that I have in this industry. And it makes things so much easier when you have this context. And my hope is that this gives back. So first things first, and I just gotta make sure I can actually change my slides. All right, what is HVAC? 101 stuff here, guys. HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Sometimes you'll add the R, as in with Women in HVACR. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning is kind of the main acronym for that. You'll hear it called HVAC. You'll hear it referred to as that. R stands for refrigeration. Many of the crossover, the services that we provide for even just, comfort control and stuff also includes refrigeration. It can be something like commercial refrigeration. It can get into your air conditioning. It can get into grocery stores and stuff like that too. So you add the R on the end of it. And we'll kind of go into some of that as well. But to know the acronym, you hear it called HVAC industry, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Pretty 101 on that stuff. I promise the whole slideshow is not like that. All right, benefit or brief history. So brief history, if you guys haven't heard this before, a lot of, you'll kind of recognize some of the names, a lot of the entire shaping of our nation has to do with air conditioning, and the same thing for parts along the world. I mean, we kind of take it for granted and think, oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about it in high school if you think about it, but how important air conditioning and temperature control and being able to provide that shaped our world. If you think about even how the US is laid out, you have most of the concentrated manufacturing and stuff for the longest time was located in the Eastern Seaboard and the Midwest, because they couldn't control climate, and they can't have a factory in the middle of Arizona or in New Mexico in the middle of July. It just wasn't even sustainable. People living in those areas, there wasn't really a breakout of people buying homes or moving to the other side of the state or the other side of the country until air conditioning was invented. It became mainstream for homes. A lot of the housing you'll see in California and in Arizona and stuff usually is mid-century. because the 1950s is really when air conditioning became available to just about everybody. Then you saw industry be able to take foothold in different states and regions where they could finally set up shop that allowed people to work in buildings in summertime or in the wintertime for that matter. So there's a lot of different things that people kind of take for granted. Another cool thing about air conditioning is one of the things when it started becoming a thing on the market, it was a novelty for for theaters. So theaters would use that as kind of a gimmick during the summer, come catch a flick because, you know, we have AC. And that was kind of a neat thing. It was a novelty, but it wasn't really until, like I said, the 50s until it became mainstream market. And then since then, it has kind of exploded into many, many, many things. And it's not just one thing, it's several different types of equipment. We'll go over that in a bit. But don't take for granted the fact that this industry has a very, very, very important role in our society, in our culture, in, you know, industry in general and business. It is a big deal. And it's a very lucrative industry because of that. So you'll always have a place. And again, as we talk about things like with the pandemic and everything recently in the last 2 crazy years, we are an essential service because of that, which is a huge blessing. All right. Industry organizations. You'll hear a lot of acronyms kind of passed around. It's kind of one of those things where, like, when you first get in, you're like, I don't know what an ASHRAE is or what's the difference between AHR and that. You have AHRI, you have NATE. So I only gave a couple examples. There are several amazing organizations in the industry. However, these are some of the main ones that you're going to want to know, okay? And they all service different pillars, if you will, or different verticals. So again, you have ACA, of course, the Contracting Association. ACA has been around a long time. There are 2 different types of ACA now, okay? There are local chapters and local levels, which are separate from the corporate or the national organization. Okay, so some of you live in states like Florida or Texas or Michigan that have a local TACA or FLACA or SMACNA or CCA, the South Carolina one. There's several different ones. And then there's national ACA, which is the most common, the ACCA organization. They work a lot with legislation. They work a lot with best practices for contractors. They're a fantastic organization. And if you do have a local one that you're involved with or get involved with, make sure that you know you're doing your part for state and local legislation, but then the national one for national legislation. And that really helps out. Then you have ASHRAE, which is more of the engineering side of the industry, NATE, technician certification, and making sure that we have best practices and standards as far as tech training. Women in HVACR, we're pretty cool. Women in HVACR exists to encourage women in the industry in general and to retain them. One of the kind of side notes, not just we are trying to recruit, but we are trying to retain. Because if you have a group of people that you have a network, and as long as you know somebody in this industry, you're going to have a job and you're never going to walk into a room alone. And Women HVACR kind of provides that foothold. Plus, we have a lot of education, networking, mentoring. We do scholarships. It's a great organization to be involved with, and it's men and women involved, honestly. Hardy, wholesalers. The wholesalers and distributors of our industry have Hardy as their kind of best practice and what they get involved with legislation, philanthropy. It is a fantastic group and that they kind of network and get together and that works for their best interests. AHRI and HRAI, 2 different organizations, 1 goal. So HRAI is the Canadian version of AHRI. I'm doing okay, guys. So both of them control the standards of equipment standards, what the energy rating should be, you know, what we're doing for emissions. They're really involved in all of the standards that get set. And they also work very heavily with legislation in that aspect. So just a broad overview. There's a lot more that these organizations do, but if you have context now as to who, what, when, where, why, at least you have these. I definitely recommend going to their websites and learning more about them than I can tell you on this call. Main activities for this industry, kind of broad stroke this before. You have everything from furnace installations to air conditioning to heat pumps. You got natural gas, a lot of other side things like duct cleaning. And we'll go over this in the slideshow later. There's residential level services and products. There's commercial and industrial level service and products. And all of those have their own maintenance subsidiary products that also go with those. A lot of different IAQ add-ons, for instance. That was a really big one the last 2 years, indoor air quality stuff. humidifier. So like there's parts and pieces. There's a lot of the installation of the equipment. This is just a few examples of that. The main activity of our industry at the end of the day is providing comfort generally, or you also support those who do provide comfort or climate control, if you will, to the end user, which could be commercial, residential, industrial. Common challenges. I'm going through these ones fast. We're gonna get through this. Common challenges: stiff competition. When it comes to contracting at the bottom level of the supply chain, if you will, contracting has a lot of competitors. There are easily a contracted company that opens just about every day. There's a lot of techs out there that start their own business. In fact, the balance of the industry in general, and I know a lot of you might be in manufacturing or wholesale, and this kind of goes to you. There is probably 80% of the industry are these smaller contractors, okay? The ones that are less than, and I'll go over sales volume in a second, for their sales volume, they're usually less than 2 million. And those are the smaller guys. Maybe they have 2 or 3 or 5 techs or anything like that, or maybe they're a truck in a truck is what we refer to it, a one truck chuck. So you have one guy, one truck, and he's running his own business and buying equipment and buying parts and stuff. Then you have the 20% of the industry that is the bigger guys. And that's what you're talking about. I guess I'm gonna give the examples, the Gettles of the world, the George Brazils, the Crop Metcalfs, the mega industry stuff, anything really above, honestly, the $5 million range and above. Anybody who has more than 7 techs or 8 techs, 10 techs, you're getting into 12 techs or whatever, or it depends on the state, of course. But, they're massive companies that are churning out more of a sales volume that's a lot higher than just your one truck chucks, if you will. It's a stiff competition though, because you only have a small percentage of the industry that are the big hitters, but the largest percent are everybody who has a truck and everybody who has a background in HVAC. Seasonality has a huge impact on our industry. I know people will tell you otherwise sometimes, but honestly, if we have a polar vortex again and everybody hits 0, it's a very good year for furnace sales, not gonna lie. But if we have a winter, for instance, I'm in Michigan, that is sitting roughly at even like 25 or 28 degrees for us, or 30 degrees or 35 degrees, that is actually a warm winter for us. And it really does affect our sales. I'm telling you, we are an undertaker industry. Nobody is passionate about what we do until it's broken. And so many times, unless people have to get something replaced on the residential level, at least, or even, and on the other level, in commercial too, unless it's something that's an absolute need, they're not going to spend the money on it unless it's an absolute need. And so seasonality, if you have heat waves, if you have, those polar vortexes and stuff, really do drive demand up and affect sales in our industry. And so we are very weather driven, no matter what part of the country you're in. Labor shortages. You hear this all the time. We are constantly affected by labor shortages because we have a very big stigma around our industry. We always had. It's getting better all the time. But in general, if you think about the majority of people on this call, you probably went through school not even knowing which HVAC was. That's a big problem. And so we have this context in our mind constantly where HVAC is not for me, or it's something I don't really understand, or it's a guy's job, or whatever. But it's also, there was a stigma wrapped around it not being a career option. And so because of that, we actually have a massive generation of baby boomers, if you will, and people who have been in the trade for years that are going to be retiring. And we have a very small generation of Generation Xers that are filling some of those spots, but we have a massive generation of millennials that don't even know those spots exist. Okay, it's creating quite the labor shortage, and the demand is going up. A tech right now, a technician in any level, can make some mad money because there's such a shortage to get a technician and have them, for the demand that's out there. Our demand is massive. I'm going to rabbit trail this real quick because I think it's important to realize this. Demographics have a large effect on our industry. Demographics in general, you're talking about age of clients, for instance. Right now, as you guys all know, everything's crazy to get. The housing market's pretty insane. You have a lot going on with, as far as supply shortages, so you can't get a hold of anything. We have what is now known as the largest generation of home buyers. 33-year-olds are now the most common home buyers. And right now, the millennial generation has hit the largest amount of 33-year-olds on the planet. And we are I'm in the country, if you will. And right now, we don't have enough inventory in homes to actually feed them so that they can buy homes. If people are staying in their homes longer, a lot of baby boomers, there's a lot of new technologies out there, so they are staying in their homes longer. There's not enough homes on the market right now, and the prices are all driven up. There's inflation, and there's equipment shortages, and there's a material to get a house built right now is ridiculous. So this is all good news, honestly. I know besides equipment shortages, I don't want anybody killing me. Besides equipment shortages, it's good news for us as this industry because the demand for our services is high, ridiculously high. And we have that job security, if you will, especially when those 33-year-olds start getting homes and it's a new generation of people that need a service provider or need equipment. New construction's gone up, that's another version of contracting is all those new construction jobs are out there. Again, equipment shortages do affect this quite a bit, but the demand is there. And the demographics that we have currently are driving this because we have these people that are retiring. We have these people that are, just coming into the home buying market, and home buyers are our end user for residential, but they're also the largest group of people that are also using our services currently. And we need to encourage them to join our labor force, if you will. Customer expectations, in general, with the rise of the internet, customer expectations and buying everything from Amazon, everything from being able to price label parts and pieces. This is a huge challenge that we have that we didn't face in the early 2000s and 90s so much, but over the last 10 years, it's been something that a lot of people have had to mask their prices or come up with new ways of selling things and stuff like that to be able to hold a conversation with, the internet warriors out there, if you will. Everybody thinks they're an expert because they looked it up online, and it's a constant battle. Common terms. Again, this is broad strokes, guys. There's a lot of common terms, but I really want you guys to know these in context. SEER, seasonal energy efficiency ratio. I know this is wrong, but it's also it's common to say. I just had to say it. Standard energy efficiency rating is another way, but it is seasonal energy efficiency ratio is what it is. SEER is what the equipment rating is used, and then this is broad strokes again, but the SEER rating on equipment is basically what the energy efficiency rating is. And different states have different rating requirements. For instance, in Michigan, or I think in Texas right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think it might be a 14. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Michigan might be a 14 too. I know California is like the land of, forgive me if you're from California, but all the land of unicorns out there. And right now, I think it's like in the 20s or something like that. It's pretty high. Equipment with SEER ratings that are higher than that, they're super energy efficient. They're usually more expensive equipment. Each state has different legislation that they pass in order to make the demands as far as what you use per state, what equipment is required, what's the base level that you can have installed. And this is where kind of things like energy rebates come into play a lot, where people are having the ability to, work off government rebates to be able to say, okay, this is the next, in order to receive $2,000 back on your new system because we want to upgrade you to a 16 SEER instead of the 13 SEER you're currently at. So you'll hear that quite a bit. So just so you know, that's what SEER stands for. And that's one of the things that equipment's rated on as far as when you're talking about what the energy efficiency rating is. And each state is different. Your state will probably have a different rating than the next state. And it's all based on what individual legislation you have and what your energy rating demands are. OEM, original equipment manufacturer. Again, you'll hear that tossed around quite a bit. Manufacturer is a common term, but the original equipment manufacturer, OEM, they'll say the OEMs are doing this, or, like the OEM supply chain or anything like that. That's what it's referring to. We'll talk a lot more about OEMs and manufacturers in another slide, so just give me a second. IoT, Internet of Things. Again, this is beyond my pay grade, but at a base level to be understanding on this, you're talking about everything from controls to smart homes to connected devices and stuff, and it's a very hot topic in our industry right now. I have a slide on this later, but so you know what the acronym is, that's what the people are talking about when they're referring to Internet of Things or IoT. A dealer, a lot of manufacturers, a lot of distributors will refer to dealers all the time. This was a common term that you'll hear if you do any kind of co-op marketing stuff. The dealer is usually the contractor or the end user or the buyer of that equipment. And so that's kind of the interchangeable one. Distributor will kind of go over the supply chain in general. Distributor, wholesaler, two different kind of things that kind of cross over quite a bit. But in general, the distributor is the one that works closely with the manufacturer, and not all manufacturers use a distribution or third-party distribution. We'll go over that too. Manufacturer's rep, and this is one that gets looked over a lot, but manufacturer's reps are important. They're usually employed by the manufacturer to sell their product or to increase sales of their product by going, and working with distributors or wholesalers and talking about what that product has to offer, and then encouraging them to carry that product, if you will. So, and then they'll also take over the client relationship.
Hey, John. Wonderful. How are you?
I can actually find that one. All right. So please don't forget to mute. We have tons of people in here today. Split system. A split system is literally a system that can go between heating and cooling. We have a lot of different split systems. We're going to go over them at a very base level a little bit later. I have pictures and stuff like that, so you'll be able to see. A ton is 12,000 BTUs. This is something I learned as a kid because I was always that crazy. I mean, my father's a contractor, so of course for a science fair, we did a lot with refrigeration. And so we did, I had a whole vacuum pump. I had a whole gas chamber for the dangers of carbon monoxide. So learning what a BTU was early on, British thermal unit. So if you see that in any kind of documentation about stuff, if you're looking at, different things or measurements and stuff like that, that's what they're talking about. Or if you have a 2-ton system or a 3-ton system, that's the reference there. Equipment manufacturing. This is a broad topic, but you need to know that it's kind of complicated. So I was actually on the phone with Erica last night, and we had quite a bit of fun going through just women HVAC sponsors in general. And so I've had the crash course in education and coming into this, where we have an amazing amount of great sponsors that are a lot of manufacturers, of course. And so Erica would be talking to me, be like, well, this person here, I don't have a record for that. I said, that person there is actually the same as this person, because so many manufacturers usually have like a parent company or, and the original manufacturer, if you will, and then they'll have subsidiary companies underneath that name or other brands and stuff. And it becomes kind of a tangle. That itself could be its own Zoom class to kind of navigate what companies belong to what manufacturer. But again, this is broad level. Manufacturers are the ones that create the product, create the equipment. That is a big deal because we have everything from the parts and pieces to the tools used to actually fix the equipment to the actual equipment itself. Obviously, these are logos and examples of some of the equipment manufacturers and parts and pieces and stuff that we have in the industry. This is just a few examples. Just know that most manufacturers have a couple lines. They usually have a primary line, a secondary line, and usually an off-market line or something. I guess an example of this would be a lot of things like Goodman has Amana, and it also has Daikin. You also have Trane, American Standard with their partnership with Mitsubishi. You have Carrier and Bryant. So all of them kind of coincide together. Something to keep in mind is that manufacturers are also things like the tools. So you got like things like Fieldpiece, Yellow Jacket, JB, anybody that creates a tool manufacturer, Diversitech, which is several things. You have Quiet Flex, parts and pieces and stuff. So anything that you need to, install the system or to lay out the system. It's very much anytime it's a product that's being created, you can kind of think of it this way, that's the manufacturer. So that's the top level, if you will, of the supply chain because you need the product first and foremost. Distributors and wholesalers. This one's kind of complicated too. So most manufacturers, and the large majority of them, and I'm not going to get into master wholesalers or master distributors or anything like that, but most of them work through a third-party supplier or supply chain, meaning that they're working with a distributor or they're working with a wholesaler to distribute their product. Okay, not everybody does. In fact, Lennox is one of the ones that actually doesn't work through a third party. They work through their own. So they actually sell directly through using their own distributors. And most things, like if you think about Munches or Buehler-Young or Mingledorff, those are just some examples I grabbed. For instance, Mingledorff is a Carrier distributor. They are very much into Carrier and Bryant products. Buehler-Young does a lot of Carrier. I think Munches is all Trane and American Standard and Mitsubishi stuff. Johnstone can be several things. It just basically each distributor usually has a product or manufacturer that they work with pretty exclusively for their main equipment lines, but they have several manufacturers that they'll work with for different products like tools or parts and pieces. And they'll usually work with manufacturers reps to be able to, get into selling that equipment, or they'll work with a manufacturer's rep, or they'll work with a manufacturer directly when they're trying to, get a certain pricing on that product or order product. And then they service contractors. They service industrial contractors. They service residential contractors, commercial contractors. They will do anything they can to make sure that that contractor has the equipment and buys through them directly. Most contractors usually work with 2 to 3 distributors, but they have one main distributor that they do the majority of their purchasing from, and they'll usually stick to one line of equipment. First off, one line of equipment because it's easier to train. It's easier to have your technicians kind of familiar with one set. Plus you get a lot, and we'll go into co-op marketing stuff, but you get a lot more rewards, just like frequent flyer miles, staying with the same distributor, staying with the same line of equipment, and you're able to get better pricing that way as well. Again, we're painting in broad strokes. This is a very big audience, and this is a very broad, there's a lot of people on here who probably know a lot more than I do. I know just enough to be dangerous, okay? And I'm hoping you guys now do too. All right, service providers. Myself, I am a service provider. Shameless plug on that. As a service provider, it is any company that is used to support any of these industries. So for instance, manufacturers and distributors and contractors all use, and even reps, they all use some sort of service provider, whether it be a sales tool or any kind of CRM tool, a marketing company, maybe it's an inventory tool, any of those, warranty companies, getting into financing companies. Those are all third-party services that support the sales and honestly, the organization of any other company. So Online Access, my company is an example of a service provider. We support contractors, but we also support wholesalers too, and we provide marketing solutions, if you will. I know we have a bunch of search or schedule engine and search king people on here today. That's another example. FTL Finance, I saw a couple of you registered. Again, a financing company is an example of a service provider. So if you hear the term vendor, service providers, if you're at a show and you have to figure out which one goes on your badge, now you know. So you have service vendors, or any kind of third-party organization that supports, or company that supports another company with any kind of tools, marketing help, sales, whatever it is. Contractors. This I have a little bit more information on because, of course, this is my bread and butter. HVAC contractors. HVAC contractors, it can be, and I'll go into the types of them, but they're the ones that actually are having the technicians to install the equipment, service the equipment, and maintain the equipment. So they're doing repairs, installation, maintenance on any of the equipment. So they're usually buying all the equipment from a distributor or wholesaler, or buying directly if they're using another one that doesn't work through a supply chain. But generally speaking, they have a distributor that they are loyal to, that they buy equipment from. When they have, and that equipment comes from the manufacturer, and they're kind of have all the logos, all their branding on their stuff will probably carry a lot of those logos. They'll have it on their website, they'll have it on their uniforms. They train their techs, so they're constantly getting training with their techs on that particular brand of equipment because that's what they're installing all the time, or servicing a lot of the time too once they get into their market. A lot of contractors will do other brands too. They'll have like a secondary line if they can't get, especially now. In fact, the last 2 years proved anything. It was getting into where contractors would leave their primary line of equipment because they couldn't receive the equipment they wanted. So they had to find something somewhere else in order to serve the demand of the homeowners that was out there for the last 2 years. And that's still kind of true today. A lot of people kind of switched around in order to get the equipment they needed. Sales volume. You'll hear this a lot when people talk in context of contractors. And I kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit. You get into, for instance, the company that our family business here is Vincent's Heating and Plumbing in Michigan. And we do 4.8 million in sales volume. And we do that in an area of 65,000 people and 32,000 homes. And so people will give those numbers a lot. That is context of sales volume. That is not saying that that's what their net is or anything like that. So just take that, and it's different in every state. The cost of equipment in Port Huron, Michigan, where I'm from, is completely different in Dallas, Texas. Plus, it's completely different in Los Angeles, California. So when you're hearing somebody give their sales volume number, it doesn't necessarily that means their net or anything like that, because you don't know what they're paying in equipment or how they're running their business, but it lets you know how much equipment they're moving, how much things they're selling, how many things they're selling, and what they're doing as a company. It usually gives you a general idea of how many technicians and stuff they have too. So that's what it means when you pull a contractor say that, what they do. That's the kind of context you need there. Different types of contractors. You have industrial, new construction, residential, and commercial. Industrial gets into the really big stuff, guys. We're talking like warehouses, you're talking factories, you're getting into like mega buildings, maybe big convention centers and stuff. You can kind of get into some heavy industrial when you're talking about downtown high rises and stuff. So that's like very big equipment. Usually it's industrial boilers, very huge package units and stuff that are kind of like the rooftop installs and everything. You're talking about a whole different type of technician too. Industrial technicians and commercial technicians, they're usually trained on completely different types of equipment, and it's a completely different sales structure because your buyers are completely different. It's not the same as having a homeowner that you're constantly, changing up jobs every day. It's usually you're working with a foreman or construction manager, the business owner, property manager, getting into like groups. And then those jobs are massive amounts of money generally. And it's harder to get paid in industrial and commercial. Generally, it's usually a pain in the butt to collect money. And a lot of you will kind of, attest to that because you have to go through so many people. So you have to have one heck of accounts receivable to be able to get your paycheck once you already pay for the equipment and all of the install and everything. New construction is pretty different too, because it's usually you're set on, you have the job of one neighborhood, for instance, or maybe it's a shopping mall or something, but your guys are literally laying out the entire ducts, all the air systems, everything in the new home, and they're there for days, maybe weeks, and they'll go house to house to house to house to house and rinse and repeat, or they'll be at the mall or whatever's being built all day long, but they have zero interaction with a homeowner or anything like that. It's usually a foreman or construction guy. And it's always very much the same thing all the time. You're just like rinsing, repeating the same installation process and going, building to building. Residential, probably one of the most popular and also the most challenging markets is, being able to do homeowners. And so you're talking about residential homes. An average contractor, average size depends, but they usually have a service area that's generally 20 to sometimes 30 miles around where their shop is. And they'll go home to home and they'll build up a customer base and then have service technicians that they'll dispatch. Again, residential contracting is kind of one of the most popular ones. It's a little easy to pay. It's pretty lucrative because you can also do maintenance programs off of it. You can upsell equipment. You get into special services like indoor air quality, or, we talked about connected home stuff. There's several things that you can do in residential contracting, and it's very lucrative as far as getting paid right away. Again, commercial jobs are much bigger, but it's a little harder to get paid. Supply chain, we talked about this. This is kind of how this breaks down. So you have the OEM or original equipment manufacturer at the top. There are some deviations to this. I understand that there's things like master distributors and you're getting into like, different direct chains and everything like that, but this is just the basic overview. So you have the original equipment manufacturer at the top, you have the distributor secondary, and right between them, sometimes the manufacturer's rep that's, selling out that product, or that's supporting that product. But then you have the contractor at the bottom of that. What I want to get into next is supply chain or co-op marketing. This affects many of you in here. Some of you maybe not at all, but most of you in this call it affects. Supply chain marketing or co-op marketing. It's not called supply chain marketing. I'm reading two slides at once. Co-op marketing is a big deal because co-op marketing is something that many third-party or contractors or even distributors are all involved in at some level, and definitely the manufacturers too. And as if you're a rep on this call or a third-party agency, this is going to help you out a lot too. Co-op marketing is marketing that is set up by the distributor and the manufacturer, kind of that rewards program that we talked about. So what happens is the manufacturer, let's say, I'm going to give an example. I'm always afraid to use brands and I call this big, but let's go for it. Let's say Train okay, or Ingersoll Rand at this point, they really, really want to support their American Standard dealers or their Trane dealers. And so what they do is they set aside X amount of dollars, and they have a reward system based on what they have with, if there's a dealer, a contractor that is selling a lot of equipment, well, the more equipment you sell, the more options or more rewards you get. Very popular ones like rewards are trips. Everybody gets on a dealer trip and they go to Mexico or they do something fun. I mean, that's always a big thing. But then trips are a very popular method. You get rewards on your marketing dollars that you're able to spend. So you get rebates on certain things that you buy as a contractor. A distributor will usually structure a program that the contractor can, choose what they want to do based on the volume of sales they're doing. So if they're going to sell this amount of product, they qualify for this amount of support from the distributor, and it's usually the manufacturer paying for it. So the manufacturer basically gives generally a distributor kind of an allowance, and distributor knows how to label what contractors and what customers they have that are doing the most with them, which ones can do better, which ones they can support with this money. If they come alongside these contractors and help them get their marketing in order, maybe get their pricing done, maybe get a CRM tool, maybe they're getting financing all set up and they already have these relationships with these third-party vendors that are being subsidized by this co-op marketing program, then they can move more boxes. Because if these contractors grow, then the distributors grow. And if the distributors grow, then the manufacturers grow. So of course, it all affects everybody, but it's another way to kind of support or come alongside, or like you said, kind of a loyalty reward system is kind of the best way to look at it too. Everybody has a different program. Again, we're painting in broad strokes, but there's usually some sort of co-op marketing or funds or rebates that a contractor will get working with a distributor, especially if they have a very good relationship and they're solely working with one, kind of that frequent flyer stuff, if you will, or that reward system. They will sell X amount of product that year and they'll get X amount of co-op marketing funds or dollars, or maybe it's a rebate, or maybe the distributor has a completely different program. Regardless, there's always some sort of help or assistance that is offered by the distributor and the manufacturer. Industry trends, and we're moving right along, guys. We're actually going to get done on time, I think. Industry trends, you have smart technology. Again, we talked about connected home stuff. You're getting into everything from carbon monoxide detectors to leak detectors to getting into like your smart thermostats and your Ring doorbells and all of that being linked on one device and having that all the palm of your hand and your phone. It's one of those really hot trends. It's a very lucrative market, but you have to have a very specific market to support it though too. It's one of those things with those 33-year-old home buyers that we were talking about. It's going to be a big deal. That's the kind of market that's going to demand these type of services. It's another side project because a lot of contractors, for instance, are getting into training their technicians on how this works so that they can sell that to their homeowners as well and be that provider rather than relying on third parties like the cable company to do it or something. Sustainable HVAC is a big thing. Again, we talked about SEER as the rating for different systems based on energy efficiency, and different states have different qualifications as far as SEER goes when you're talking about equipment. So there's different types of equipment that can be sold in different states. And energy efficiency, of course, is a big deal. And of course, there's a lot of rebates available sometimes from a government level that will give you back money for upgrading your system so that you're doing your part. Refrigerant changeout's a big one. Getting rid of R22 is kind of a big trend right now. There are many different options out there that people are going to be looking at replacing that. There's a lot of things going on in Washington right now with change out as far as being able to upgrade the efficiency of all systems across the board and kind of leave more of a green or less of a carbon footprint, if you will. Demographics of the HVAC industry. It's a random slide, but in general, and I think this has changed a little bit from last time I did it, but there is probably on the technician level, there is less than 2% that are female. Now, on the main level, I don't have the updated the Department of Labor statistic on this, but we have seen an increase of women in the industry if you're talking about contracting, manufacturing, wholesale, any service provider stuff. There's a lot of women in the industry, a lot more than there were even 7 to 10 years ago. But in the field, the latest stats that we got that for the last time we did a presentation like this was less than 2% in the field, and we're trying to kind of change that demographic. So one of the stats too is that you have a lot more men because that was what people identified with. It was honestly a change in the conversation. Anybody that's heard me kind of give a speech before, you know I'm going to say it. A lot of the issue with diversity as far as men and women in this industry is based on the fact that we have our own stigma that we're fighting. If you think about it, a lot of the pictures we use, a lot of the stock photos we use, a lot of the way we talk, it's always the guys, or the dispatchers are always the girls, and the guys are always the technicians, or the guys are out there. It's the sales guy, it's the salesman. I mean, it is what it is, but everybody does it. But then when you start changing that up, you start changing the expectation. And especially when you're talking about newer generations discovering this industry as a viable career option, change up the way you're using your pictures. There's no reason why you can't use women in your pictures as far as even technicians and everything, because it is a very lucrative career option and there is a lot of opportunities. I mean, you pretty much can name the state you want to work in and how much you want to make for a lot of cases being a technician. And that's one of the things that we try to do for Women HVACR. So shameless plug and side caveat there. Popular equipment types. This is the last 20 minutes of this slideshow. We might be a little like 12:05. But this is going to be one of the things that I found the most valuable and that I have to train my team on all the time. So getting into HVAC equipment types. We do marketing for contractors. And so one of the most embarrassing things that can ever happen is if you're supporting the Facebook for a contractor or helping them with their website, and you put a picture of a water heater up when you're talking about a boiler. Yeah, not that that's ever happened before. And so it can be one of the things that you want to make sure you have context to know the difference and to competently be able to look at a piece of equipment and say what it is. I guarantee you won't be able to know how it works or how to install it by the end of this presentation, but you will know how to label it. Climate map is important. Different HVAC equipment is driven by different climates and it's popular in different climates, okay? You are never going to talk about a boiler in Texas in general, okay? Not saying they're not there. Industrial boilers are very big for several, big commercial buildings and stuff like that and hotels and stuff. But in general, when you're talking residential or even new construction, everything like that, you're not talking about residential boilers because it's not a thing, okay? Most boilers, when you're talking about a boiler, we'll get into that in a second, are the Eastern Seaboard, the Midwest. Again, you're talking about radiators and the whole 9 yards for homes and stuff. They're more for cold weather climate. Plus, they're an older form of heating. And so when you're getting more across the country, it kind of fizzles out after a while. And they're just not very effective or efficient in hotter climates. And you don't need them. Ductless. Ductless is one of those things that ductless heat pumps and anything like that, they're pretty universal everywhere. However, when you're talking about a climate map, you're going to see a lot more ductless in the Pacific Northwest than you're going to see in, Michigan, for instance. Or you have, we're going to talk about evaporative coolers or swamp coolers. You're not going to be able to use an evaporative cooler unless it's in that hot, dry climate. You're getting into like El Paso, New Mexico, Phoenix and down there. You can use that type of equipment, but you can't use that in Michigan. It's too temperate. You can't do that in Minnesota. It's just not even an option. It's too cold. So there's just different areas that demand different types of equipment. Heat pumps, for instance, especially when you're talking like a heat pump condenser or outdoor heat pump. Those are not something that is very popular in the Midwest. In fact, mostly you're talking furnaces and air conditioning rather than a heat pump. Where in Texas, they really don't know what you're talking about. If you mention furnace, they usually use a heat pump. So it is very climate driven and there's different equipment that is more popular in different regions. So understanding that from the get-go is a big deal. And understanding that, it's the terminology that people will be familiar with as well. Like different search terms, for instance, for a marketing company is a big deal because I shouldn't be optimizing this search term for this guy because it's not relevant to his area. It's not what his homeowners and his demographic refer to that service or equipment as. All right, HVAC equipment usage by region. I kind of went over that a little bit. This is all on the slideshow. So I'm just going to keep moving. Furnaces, you guys should all kind of know the difference between a furnace, a heat pump, and an air conditioning unit. We're going to go one by one real quick and we can wrap up on time. So a furnace, again, most furnaces are usually located in basements. Most Midwest and Eastern Seaboard have basement. Most homes do. Homes south of the Mason-Dixon generally don't have basements. And so you usually have more outdoor units, like that's where you're talking about heat pumps, or you're using closets on the main level that have furnaces. Furnace equipment can range in what kind of manufacturer. There's literally hundreds of different furnace manufacturers out there. This just happens to be a train that I have a picture of. A furnace is a ducted system, meaning that you have to use ducts in order, D-U-C-T, which I probably should put on the terminology thing, to move the air through the home or through the building. And so because of that, you have to have two types of installation. For instance, I have an older home. I have a 200-year-old farmhouse. I do not have a furnace. I have a boiler. I have the radiators, the old-fashioned ones and everything like that. And the floor space and how my home's built, I would have to do an entire retrofit and tear up almost all the ceilings and floors in order to fit any type of ductwork or have it exposed, because it just isn't built to sustain. It's just not built for it. Where homes nowadays, when they're designed with a ductwork system in mind to support a furnace or air conditioner. Heat pumps. So you have a couple different types of heat pumps. The most popular being the ductless heat pump or the condenser heat pump. We talked a little bit about, I use Texas as an example a lot just because it's easy. In Texas and the South, a lot of people use heat pumps because their average temperature for the winter season doesn't really require them to do any type of severe heating things, where in the Midwest and places like Minnesota and Michigan and stuff like that, we get down to a 0-degree base. Well, unless you're Texas last year for like, that strange week that they had. But in general, though, you don't really need or require a system that has to keep that much heat in the house for that long. So a heat pump's a very popular one, and what you kind of call is a split system. A split system is the ability to change between heat and cool. You'll find, especially in the Pacific Northwest, ductless is very popular. And you know what? Every state really has a ductless market. It's not just regionally specific, but at the same time, they're just more popular in some areas. Fun thing about ductless heat pumps, and I have a slide, a picture of this next. It's usually the #1 piece of equipment in other countries. In fact, the US is the only one that's really known to have an 80% that have air conditioners or air AC condensers in general, but most countries, in fact, Mexico is all ductless. Europe is all ductless. It's one of those things where ductless units are the most popular equipment type in other countries, and it's the majority that you see anywhere else. But in the US, we use a lot more heat pumps, like the condenser heat pumps or AC condensers. Our construction is completely different. Where if you're talking about Europe or Mexico and several other places, a lot of their construction can be a lot older too. So it's a lot easier for them to use a ductless heat pump because they don't have to rip up anything. They can easily just put one unit outside and one unit on the wall. An example of that, you have your wall unit, your indoor unit for a ductless unit, and you can place that room by room. A great example of this is like when you're talking about hotel rooms having their own individual climate for each room, and you can set it. It's a very good example of this. Any kind of split system is really just a system with one outside and one inside, and then you can do heat or cool. Air conditioner condensers, very different than a heat pump. Same concept though, but you have to run an AC condenser through a ducted system. Generally, people with an AC usually have a furnace that's already has ducts on it, and they run through the furnace, or they just go specifically through their own pre-made ducted system. If you do not have a ductwork system in your house or vents or anything, then you're running through the ductless system that we went over earlier. Just being able to tell the difference, because AC condensers and heat pump condensers look very similar, but they're completely different on how they're run. Evaporative coolers. I kind of like this one. They're super nasty, but it's kind of cool to explain them. Evaporative cooler or swamp cooler. Evaporative cooler can only be used in dry climates. You're talking about stuff that is in drier climates like New Mexico or El Paso is a good example because they have them on almost every roof out there. An evaporative cooler, it works with the air, or like it has to have a very, very mild dry climate in order to work, because if you have any type of liquid in the air or any kind of humidity, it just doesn't work the same. And so you're not able to use them. They're not a good fit. But you basically have the filters on the other side, which is the cardboard and stuff, and you have water in the bottom of the tray, and the water soaks up into the cardboard and the fan blows in the air. And so the water actually cools the air, and then it's pushed back into the house. That's the simplest explanation. It's a lot more complicated than that. But the cool thing about them is they're pretty efficient. They're pretty cheap. The horrible thing about them is that they're not the best for indoor air quality. They're very rarely maintained because they are on the roof, and they're kind of cheap sometimes. So they're very popular in some areas, but they're not the most indoor air quality effective, if you will. They get pretty nasty pretty fast. Boilers. Boilers are very, very popular in the Eastern Seaboard and the Midwest. It is crazy. Most homes had them, especially if you're talking about the Eastern Seaboard. It is kind of a common thing. My home in Michigan actually has one. We have the old radiators and old floors. It is definitely a cool way of doing it. So the boiler uses water and it uses it through a radiant heat, if you will. So the radiators are located in different parts of the home. And then the boiler actually, sends up the hot water and heats the water in each of those radiators. And so now you're getting radiant heat in your home. They've come a long way. There's all sorts of different kinds of boilers now. They're one of those things that you're very specific on where you're seeing them. Not that they're not located in other states, but you're generally not going to find them in the South. They're not usually the number one consumer choice down there, and they're not as effective, but you will find them a lot more on the eastern side of the country than you even will on the western side of the country. Another one is oil boilers, very different. In fact, a lot of those have kind of gone out, but they're very specific. These are very special services. Oil boilers get into, you're talking about a lot of older homes. We used to do oil as a company for my contracting company up here, but again, it kind of was one of those things that was diminishing returns. They are a pain in the butt to maintain, and it takes very special people to do it, and a lot of homes have done away with them. But there is still a market, especially I would say Pennsylvania is one of the most popular oil markets that does oil heating. So they have an entire drum with the oil, and that's their fuel, and they have to refill that all the time. And then it's the same thing before where they're using the oil to use, there's gas boilers and electric boilers and oil boilers. So oil is just a lot harder to maintain because you actually have the tank on site, and they're really big and really sloppy, and they're usually a lot older. And it takes a very specific type of technician to actually still be able to service those. We have a couple customers and contractors all over the eastern United States that actually have a lot of very specific businesses that deal with oil boilers. Geothermal, you're talking about, it's still a heat pump. It's just you're using the ground temperature. A lot of places out here in Michigan have, especially a lot of big old farm homes where they'll have lots of acreage and stuff like that. They'll take the time and they'll input a geothermal system. And it's a lot more energy efficient. It's super expensive and they're expensive to maintain, but they are definitely more effective and they cost less to run because you're actually using the heat of the ground to warm up the water or the fluid, and then that's what's actually radiating into your home. So it's actually more cost effective and energy effective, but it is a very expensive system to install and very expensive to maintain. Solar heating, a lot of you in the California area are very familiar with this. Solar heating is just another power source for whatever heating or cooling system you're using. Solar is one of those things that is very booming right now in California. There's a lot of move on it and a lot of rebates right now going around for contractors to start getting into this method and installing it. So just be aware that that can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be, but right now I think California is on the forefront right now to be able to push this out as a common method, if you will, for fueling your home. Radiant floor heating. Radiant floor heating is pretty cool. We actually, not a lot of radiant floor heating where I'm from, but what's very popular for us here in Michigan is radiant driveways. So if you guys have ever been to some college campuses or even like Disneyland, if you will, or any kind of place that has this, they usually have some sort of heated sidewalks or anything like that to type with ice forming or snow or anything like that. So snow melt driveways, it's the same technology. You are basically heating up water and you have tubing systems under the floor and you're heating up the water using a heat pump where you're actually being able to take that energy and the heat rises through the floor and it actually heats the whole home. And so those are super expensive systems, but they're also very energy efficient as well. You have to be able to build that into a home. So they're usually a lot newer. But snow melt driveways are actually a service that is offered quite a bit where I'm from, where they actually come through and they pour an entire cement driveway, but they'll install it with the coils ahead of time so that they'll be able to, radiate heat from that so that it never freezes, which is kind of cool. Water heaters. So the only reason I throw this in here is water heaters are a very popular add-on product. I know it's more plumbing sometimes, but a lot of HVAC companies will do water heaters, and obviously a lot of manufacturers, it's a big product. But the thing is like for my team, we always have this in here because knowing the difference between a boiler and a water heater is a very big deal. Water heaters, there is no such thing as a hot water heater, because of course that's a double negative there. But it is a very common thing. You have tankless water heaters, you have several different kinds, you have solar powered water heaters. They're just what is used to provide hot water into a home. There's gas, electric, there's several different kinds. This is more just being able to identify what they look like. I could have added a lot more pictures of a tankless water heater too, probably. But this is an add-on service for a lot of contractors because they already have the gas licenses. And so for our area, at least, to have a gas-powered water heater, we're able to do the install for that. But there's also electric, like I mentioned, and solar powered and all sorts of different kinds out there. But this is what a water heater looks like. You guys all are probably familiar with that to get your hot water. And that wraps up with 3 minutes to spare. And it's kind of crazy for questioning, but I can go through the chat. I'm telling you, it was broad. So I'm hoping that you guys got a lot out of that for at least some context. But feel free to jump in anytime with questions or anything like that. And I'm trying to go through the chat, but it's a little crazy.
I was able to get everybody's email addresses that put in the chat. And then there was just, sorry, that's my child in the background. And so just so everybody knows, I did get all those email addresses. I didn't get to respond to everybody, but, and so there was some discussion in the chat. I think, was it Jennifer that somebody mentioned that Ingersoll does not own Trane anymore, just to clarify that.
Oh, Trane Technologies. I'm so sorry. I'm so old school on that. I did know that. Thank you for clarifying that.
So that was one part. So yes. And then
it's Trane Technologies now. Yeah, that was just old school stuff on me. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out though. Again, that's very important to distinguish.
Yes. Absolutely. And then there was just some discussion going on about ductless and where people are seeing more ductless, more in basements or garages. And so that was a little bit of part of the chat there. And so anyway, just wanted to keep you up to date on that.
You can use them for your bonus rooms, your above the garages, anything like that. You can add them on to additional systems and stuff. But if you're talking about doing your whole home in them, it's an option that some people use too. But no, thank you, Erica, for grabbing those email addresses, guys. And we can follow up with the slideshow. I can share that. Again, broad strokes today. I'm hoping that we just had to cover a lot in an hour, and this was more to just give context. But thank you, Jen, for pointing that out. I did know better. I just was apparently not even thinking. Any other questions that guys can think of? I know I have a lot of private messages to go through in here.
Karina wants to know, how does Women in HVACR support women in the industry?
All right, so Women in HVACR has a lot of different things that we do. In fact, one of our main things is our scholarship program, where we're trying to encourage women into the industry. But then the retention part of it is very important to us as well. So we have a mentoring program. We actually have a mentorship program that matches up mentees and mentors so that you're always having a person as a sounding board to grow your career and learn from. And in addition to that, we have our networking opportunities and our ambassador program. Networking opportunities is obviously one of the core fundamentals of our group. It's just an awesome byproduct of being together, but you're always going to have a network of people that you can pull on, that you can say hi to at shows, that you'll never, and I say this a lot, never walk into a room alone. You're always going to meet 12 to 15 more people than you would have alone if you walk in with somebody and you have somebody that has your back. In addition to our ambassador program, like we kind of mentioned, that is the ability to do events. We actually provide you with things like this slideshow here, or ones we've done before, like retention or Women in HVACR. We have another one of women in the industry. We have different job opportunities in the industry. We have this one, which is the overview of the industry, and a couple other presentations. But we also have handouts, slide decks, talking points, that you can actually become an ambassador and go to schools and Girl Scout troops and trade organizations, whatever you need to do on a local grassroots level. We'll provide, even if you need a budget or something like that, but we'll provide all the material. We just don't have enough people. Women in HVACR is run by a purely volunteer board of directors. And we have just shy of like 650 members currently, paid members, but then we also have a platform, as you guys can see from all who showed today, of over 5,000 people that we speak to all the time. and it's all volunteer. So we just want to make sure that we're equipping people to be able to go and hit the ground running and be able to send the message that the HVAC industry is a great career choice, but then, you know, be able to also already have kind of most of the legwork done for them. So if we can come alongside people and give them what they need or empower them, if you will, to be able to do that, that's a way more effective way than us being able to run all over the country. And we can definitely hit places that we don't even have access to, which could be middle schools, you know, church groups. I mean, anything is possible really on that level. The ambassador program, the mentorship program, and then we have regional events that we'll be doing as well in our own conference and stuff. So we connect to most of the major industry events. In fact, we have a huge schedule this year for some major industry events. Most recently coming up is ASHRAE. We'll actually be at the AHR Expo in Las Vegas. So if you guys are going to be in the Vegas area or live in the Vegas area or going to be at AHR, make sure you check us out. We have a lot of educational speakers. Our website, womeninhvacr.org/AHR 2022 has all the info. And we have a huge hospitality event on Tuesday night. So if you RSVP to that and come join us and party and get to know us and stuff like that, that's a huge event that we have coming up too that we want to invite everybody to. Yeah, I hope that answered questions as far as what we're doing. I could go on and on. Anything else before we wrap up?
You're just getting lots of thank yous. Great presentation. Wish I would have had this 2 years ago when I joined the industry. So Colleen, I know that this was super helpful for so many people, even for me as well. I know Laura Lynn is chatting in there that yes, we do have a booth at ASHRAE as well. The booth number is on that website. So once again, go to womeninhvacr.org, click on events, go to the AHR 2022, and you'll have all the information for our booth.
I'm actually putting the thing in there right now.
Thanks. Oh, and Marcia just put the booth in there.
Perfect.
It's 10410 in the North Hall.
Thank you, Marcia. Awesome. And so many people are asking, can we get this presentation? Can we get the slide deck? We'll probably just be sending out an email to everybody. Probably will go on our YouTube channel, I'm guessing, Colleen. So we'll send the link to the YouTube channel, and that will be the easiest way for you guys to watch it as many times as you want for all of your team. So, but yes.
Right. Well, if you guys are going to be at ASHRAE, we hope to see you there. Definitely say hi, and I hope this presentation helped, and we'll give copies and stuff, okay? Thank you guys so much for your time. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.